actually going to start with a running rig. So once again, what I normally do using braid, I've got that little about ½ meter trace that my sinker can run up and down on, and then I've got my main trace down to my hooks. Actually going to run a keeper, and we get a lot of crabs on this beach, but I do still like using that running rig, so I'll start with that, and if my bait starts getting taken and I'm obviously getting no bites, I'll go to a dropper rig, get that bait up off the ground. But I'll start with that. I do like using the running rig. Just got a breakaway there, running a 5 ounce breakaway. And then obviously when you cast it out, digs in the sand, your bait floats up, and then obviously your line doesn't get dragged everywhere. And then when you strike on the fish or you want to wind in, you pull, breaks away, and you wind in. I'm just going to start with half a pulley. My favourite part is the head. What I like to do is I go through the eye a couple of times. And what that does, that's the hardest part of the head there. So when you're casting, it's got something to sort of grab hold of and doesn't get ripped, your hook doesn't get ripped through the bait. So I've gone through, and then in the body, half in, roll the hook out, expose the barb, pull that tight so that it's nice and tight. Running the keeper today. What I'm going to do is come in on that other side in the gill plate, which is another hard piece, roll the hook, and that'll end up at the eye where your bait is, where the line's coming out. So that's it there, and to keep that holding tight, I'm going to put some elastic bait cord on it. So here's my elastic. Basically just going to wrap around, do a couple of wraps around the head and off onto the line itself, pull, and that's it. You can do a half hitch on that cotton, but what I find with it being on that line, it just stays there. So I'll set my breakaway. And what you can do is bend those if they're too far apart. And there you go, set. So yeah, although it's high tide, I'm not going to walk in the water. I like fishing this beach on the low. It's quite shallow, the first sort of 30-40 metres, and then drops away a bit. So on that low tide, you're right on that drop. But we'll see how we go. I don't want to get too wet. Might not have to. Don't get wet first, because you might not need to. You might catch fish not even getting wet. Walk back, bail wire open, so you're not losing all that distance you casted. Once you've got your rod in the holder, you can wind up that slack quite tight because you've got the breakaway. It's not going to move. That's the great thing with those breakaways. You can run a pretty tight line, set your drag. Had a couple of little nibbles, nothing major. Now when you're pulling in the, like I was saying, you've got the breakaway sinker, so when you're pulling it in, you don't want to just start cranking away because that breakaway is still set. So what you want to do is basically what you do on a fish is strike, breaks away, and then you can just wind in. There you go, had broken away. Bait's had a bit of a chew at. Could be crabs, it looks like crabs, but there's also a little nibble there off the back end of it. Off here, so that tells me that the fish has had a go, but the crabs have also had a go. I'll try one more, and then I might swap over to that dropper. Okay, I've got the tail this time. What I like to do, start at the tail end, go right through, halfway up, right through, and then in the body, roll the hook, expose the barb, pull that line so it's tight. Now be careful when you pull that line, it might rip your bait, so grab the line that's going to the hook first, pull that tight, then your line. And what you can do a half hitch on the bait, bring your keeper, go under that line that's crossing over from your first hook. There you go. I still like to use that cotton. It's always good to have that cotton, just keeps that bait nice and firm. So just wrap around the body, around the main part of the hook, up under where your barb's coming out, a couple times round the line, or you can break it. And do a little half hitch, and there you go. We'll get that bit in there. Like I was saying, looked like I had a couple of bites, so I'm just going to stick with this running rig on this bait and we'll see what happens. If nothing majorly happens with a good bite or anything like that, I might swap over. So once again with this breakaway, they're a bit loose, you can squeeze them in, and that just makes it more firm when you lock them in. Otherwise they're just too loose and they'll pop out when you're winding that slack. You want about half a foot between the swivel and the tip. And that gives you enough to be able to flick it out. If you've got it too far close, the swivel right up on the eye is not good. If you've got too much line out, you can't flick it. Hold your rod out to where you're casting, let it hit the water, let it sink. And what I do is I walk back until it gets tight, because I'm just pulling the slack. Got a cross-shore wind that's pulled a lot of my line out. It's come tight now, and then I'm going to let line out as I walk back. Keep that tight line. Got that strong cross-shore wind. It's got a bow. Like I was saying with that breakaway, I can wind it a little bit tight. If you're running a ball sinker or even a reef with that bow in it, a lot of wind, every time you wind it, your bait comes closer to you. See how we go. Set your drag and wait for the fish to bite. Okay guys, I've swapped it out for the dropper rig. So just a standard dropper rig, made it myself, basic. Just got the swirl up here to the braid, got about 1.5 meter trace, hook halfway down and then sinker. I've made it a little bit short where the hook is, just because of the crabs. I don't want it too close to the bottom. So hopefully that sink will be down the bottom there, and that'll be up off the bottom, that bait. So we'll see how we go with that. Now when casting your line out, you don't want to use the EVA by holding your line onto the EVA, especially with braid. You're going to cut your fingers. So a lot of guys put the line on the EVA to cast, and especially when you're using mono, what normally happens is that line starts spilling out like that, gets caught around the reel, around the handle and all sorts. You go to cast and that line's just sort of pulling out by itself because there's no tension on that main line on your spool. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to take up that tension of the line with your finger. So your hands round the reel handle there, round the rod, take up that line with your finger. Put your bail wire over, and that line stays firm on your spool, okay? So bail wire over, you take the tension up with your finger. That line doesn't peel out because you've got all the tension here. Now also what you've got to be careful of is don't put the line in the little crease of your finger. It will cut, it'll end up cutting. Even mono does that. All you need to do is you take up that tension with the very tip of your finger, even using braid. So that's all you need to do is put it there. And then when you cast, you just point and the line will go out. Okay, so we'll relook at that. Use the tip of your finger, not in the groove, not even half on your finger, it will still cut through there. All you're doing is just taking up that little bit of tension and cast, point. Still running the Nano Matrix Plus rod. It's a real nice rod. Been using it for a while now and I can't find any faults. Nice and light. It's just nice and streamlined. Not real thick and chunky. And the Trio Rex Salt, I've had no problems with it at all. I'm not treating it overly nice, just want to sort of give it a good test, so just fish with it, take it home, give it a little bit of a clean, nothing major. And so far so good, haven't had any problems. So hopefully get a few fish changing over to that rig. What we might do is, we get nothing here, it's getting nice and cloudy, which is good. Like I was saying, it's real crystal clear water. Might head over into the harbour. We were over there the other night, but there was just masses and masses of weed. It's that eel weed, I think they call it, that eel grass. And it was just clogging up our line real bad. I've never had it that bad. So we had to call it we had to pretty much stop fishing. I only had 2 casts and that was it. But we might head over and have another shot while it's nice and cloudy. We've got the outgoing tide, which I like fishing. Fishing into a hole as the tide goes out, we get closer to the hole. So we'll spend maybe half an hour here. If nothing happens, we might head over there for a bit of a look. Hopefully we can get a bait out without it getting too clogged up. Done a little bit of a shift. We were over at Pueki before. Didn't really get anything. Still got to drag it up over that lip. And we're just casting into that little hole that me and Steve-O love to fish. And I'm hooked up. Drops over my head right here. right in front of me. There's a lip. It's actually a big trevally, I think. Yeah, big trevor. Not a bad fish. Man, they get some power behind them when they get on their sides. He's a nice big trev. And there you go. Nice big trevally. There you go, nice harbour trevally. We'll let him go. He's fit and ready to go. There you go. Nice fish for the harbour. Thanks for watching another great day out fishing with Real Kiwi Fishing. And you can also find more of my movies on my YouTube channel, Real Kiwi Fishing.